We live in an era where every step we take is logged, tracked, and recorded. Between security cameras, financial records, and digital footprints, it is practically impossible for a human to simply drop out of sight without leaving a trail. Yet, long before our current web of surveillance, two vastly different men, operating decades apart, managed to achieve the impossible. They vanished completely. On November 24, 1971, a man using the alias Dan Cooper boarded a commercial flight from Portland to Seattle. Shortly after takeoff, he claimed to have a bomb, demanded $200,000 and 4 parachutes, and eventually he leaped from the rear of the commercial plane into the freezing night sky over the Pacific Northwest. 27 years later, in the autumn of 1998, a reliable 38-year-old accountant named Daniel Harper kissed his wife goodbye, left his Cedar Falls, Montana home at 7:15 a.m. in his blue sedan, and he simply never arrived at work. Neither man achieved their vanishing act by perfectly erasing their tracks. Instead, they left behind a trail of highly specific physical evidence that actively derailed the authorities trying to find them. The immediate aftermath of Cooper's jump offered investigators an incredibly clear starting line. They had an entire commercial airliner sitting on the tarmac, its rear stairway still deployed, and a precise flight path to trace. Harper's disappearance offered a similarly specific anchor point. 2 days after he went missing, police found his blue sedan parked in a remote area near Pine Ridge Forest, nearly 40 miles off his daily commuting route. There were no signs of a struggle. His wallet was sitting inside, and his keys were still in the ignition. This map illustrates the geographic problem investigators faced. The abandoned vehicles provided exact coordinate starting points. But instead of zeroing in on a suspect, those points became the center of massive search radiuses, expanding outward into terrain that yielded nothing. The sheer scale of the resulting operations was staggering. The FBI poured years of resources into the Cooper case, investigating thousands of potential suspects. Meanwhile, in Montana, helicopters swept the skies, while volunteers scoured every trail and creek bed looking for Harper. And in both instances, the wilderness offered nothing. Searchers found no footprints, no discarded clothing, no parachute, no body. The planes and cars proved these men physically existed at those exact coordinates, but the surrounding terrain acted like a vacuum, turning hundreds of miles of open forest into a locked-room mystery. Digging deeper into the men's lives revealed intense, meticulous planning. Cooper's ransom note demanded exactly $200,000 and 4 specific parachutes, a level of precision that signaled he was prepared for a very specific set of variables. We see similar preparation in Daniel Harper's financial data. For years, his expenditures followed a strict, flat baseline of routine purchases. Exactly 1 week before disappearing, there is a massive spike, a $15,000 cash withdrawal his family knew nothing about. Leading up to that withdrawal, Harper received a dense cluster of late-night phone calls from an unidentified number. The final piece of Harper's hidden life was discovered inside a storage unit he had rented under a false name. It was effectively a library of disappearance, filled with topographical forest maps and newspaper clippings detailing the mistakes made by others who had tried to vanish. Standard investigations rely on these kinds of leads to narrow a suspect pool. In these instances, the paper trail only reveals how effectively both men stayed ahead of the authorities by choreographing their own departures. This money, weathered and decaying, was discovered in 1980 by a young boy digging along a Pacific Northwest riverbank. It was a portion of Cooper's ransom. In 2007, nearly 9 years after Harper parked his sedan, a hiker wandering deep inside Pine Ridge Forest stumbled upon a severely weathered backpack. Inside were a flashlight, a water bottle, and a notebook with handwriting that investigators believed matched Harper's. The pages of the notebook were ruined by years of exposure, but one partially readable sentence survived. It read, "If anything happens to me, they know where I am." These discoveries functioned as delayed taunts. The decayed money and the rotting backpack proved that the men, or at least their possessions, had been exactly where the police were looking. Yet the items withheld every crucial detail of who they actually were, how they escaped, and why they left. Ultimately, the evidence led nowhere. Thousands of suspects were cleared in the Cooper investigation, and detectives failed to generate a single definitive lead regarding Harper's fate. Both cases froze. A person who vanishes without a trace leaves behind an empty space, and eventually the public moves on. But a disappearance littered with specific physical evidence, like ransom money and weathered notebooks, demands an answer. The abandoned vehicles, the missing thousands, and the ruined notebooks were never intended to be a roadmap to the truth. They were the walls of a labyrinth. These cases endure because of the fragments they left behind, exactly enough puzzle pieces to ensure the investigation never truly ends.